It is September 19th, 2018. This is the Wrestling Inc. podcast. Today, talking SmackDown Live after Hell in a Cell. I'm Glenn Rubenstein, joined as always by Justin LaBar, Raj Giri on a Wednesday, and Raj, who is our guest today?
Al from Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Al, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Cool, man. SmackDown last night after Hell in a Cell. All in all, Justin, I'll go to you first today. What did you think of the post Hell in a Cell SmackDown Live?
I was good with it. Again, solid 2 hours, perfect sweet spot of time length, which we've talked about before. Definitely a couple stories, piqued my interest. Miz and Bryan, it always piques my interest. I'm always interested with stuff with Rusev. I'm happy to see that he's not going to be turned heel again right now. So there's a lot of things to take away from it. And of course, Becky Lynch, which we'll get to. So.
No, of course. Al, how about you? What did you think of Hell in a Cell?
I liked the show up until the main event, and to me, the main event kind of ruined the show for me. In as much as much as a main event can make or break a show, I was really down on it.
You mean Hell in a Cell, right?
Yes, we had Hell in a Cell. Yeah, the Braun and Roman just mess of a match, overbooked match. I wasn't into it at all. As far as SmackDown last night, I thought it was fine. It was one of these kind of placeholder shows that I thought just kind of advanced everything into the next show or series of shows. They got so much stuff that they're promoting right now. I think you touched on, maybe one of the more, if not the most newsworthy development was the split up of Rusev Day. And I thought it was handled really well. I thought it was good, compelling TV.
Yeah, Raj?
I actually really liked SmackDown Live last night. I thought the Aries, what the hell? The AJ versus Almas match was awesome. I think those guys just have great chemistry. I still don't like that they don't put AJ on last. His segments are always kind of in the middle of the show. On SmackDown, they clearly position the most important stuff to be last, and AJ is very rarely in that last spot. And I think it's just part of it's a weird thing that they have with certain guys. Like when CM Punk was a babyface, they kind of did the same thing with him. He was never on last on a pay-per-view. He was made to feel like his programs were less important than Cena. They do the same thing with AJ. I don't know why. It's their WWE championship. It only benefits them to make it seem more important. So in that sense, I didn't like that it was not the last match on the show. I did like the Becky segment, and again, the Aiden English Rusev stuff I thought was great that they finally went somewhere with it, and I like that it's Aiden turning heel and not Rusev.
Yeah. If on that point, they're bragging a lot about AJ being on pace to setting this record for the longest WWE championship reign since Punk, and I guess in a couple months we're coming up on a year, and I believe he has not headlined a pay-per-view yet during that year. And I think it's still what you're saying, yeah.
Not only that, but then if you go back and count AJ's title matches at pay-per-views, look at how many controversial finishes.
Yeah.
It's like a Ric Flair streak. He's remained champion, but he's not winning anything.
It's like a honky tonk man streak almost, and he's a babyface, right?
Yeah, it's a real problem, and I think it's happening with a few guys. You look at probably the three best workers in all of WWE, and three of the best in the world are all on the SmackDown brand, right? In AJ, Nakamura, and Daniel Bryan, and I think they're all under this same problem where, for the life of them, they are just cannot be put in a situation where they could just have a good match. It's incredible that those three guys have gone as long as they have. Not putting on like that 5-star classic match of the year candidate, and I don't think it's about them or their ability. I just think it's about the way it's being booked, the way they're featured, these wacky finishes, some of the opponents that they're paired up with, and it almost feels deliberate.
Yeah, it's very strange. I think
Samoa Joe too. When he moved over to SmackDown, he seemed a lot more important before he moved to SmackDown. And even though he's in the world title picture, it seems secondary, and he does not seem near as dangerous as he did before.
Yeah, but say what you will about the great all-time heels of the WWE, some vicious, some maniacal, some downright cruel, but how many of them could write a children's book to taunt their opponent?
Right.
That's all I'm asking.
Yep. You wouldn't have seen Andre the Giant doing nursery rhymes before WrestleMania 3.
I didn't hate that. I thought I wouldn't, but I got to see. I kind of enjoy. I thought Joe pulled it off, I should say.
Yeah,
I wasn't a fan. I did think he pulled it off better than a lot of other guys would, but he's just not that kind of heel.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that I could see like a Miz doing, even Rollins back when he was a heel. But Joe's supposed to be that kind of badass, half shoot, kind of, more serious. You don't mess with him kind of guy. And I just think it takes away from that a little bit. But yeah, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I just think it was a little inconsistent with this character.
I just had a flashback. Remember when Rollins came back? Who was it against? Was it against Roman when Rollins did the Rollins report? He was showing that terrible out of context video. It was like one of the worst heel segments in recent memory.
That's right. Yeah.
Which tells you something.
Yeah. Monday Night Raw, they got a lot of time to fill, folks. The Miz, speaking of heels, opened last night, setting up his match for the Super Showdown versus Daniel Bryan. The winner will earn a shot at the WWE Championship. And he was talking about Daniel, brought out Maurice as a special guest, and then he started talking back about Brie Bella. That was too much for Daniel, came out and started beating up the Miz. Miz got knocked into Maurice, EMT card came out, there was a fake out. I don't know, this whole thing, man. I love this feud, but they got to work to keep it a little more interesting. How about you guys? How about you, Al? What'd you think of this segment?
I thought it was kind of like half an angle, I was intrigued with the whole setup of Maurice appearing to be hurt and the medics coming out and Daniel Bryan being concerned. But then she went and kind of gave it all up before Miz was even able to capitalize, right? I mean, I think that storyline works if he does get flattened, if he does get hit with the skull-crushing finale. But what exactly did she set up that giving the Miz enough time to get behind him? Nothing really came of it.
Yeah, and Maurice did announce she's retiring again for a while, going to go focus on being a mom. So this feud is going to be back to Daniel and The Miz one-on-one. Justin, is that a good development in your mind?
Well, I mean, certainly Daniel Bryan and The Miz don't need the wives. I mean, they did add something to help, I guess, fill another month. But but it's not obviously the origin of it all is the just polar opposites and dislike that the two have and how they've sold it so well. Al made a great point that was one thing, is that the Maurice she did go a little bit too early in the scenario. It seemed like with her, haha, we got you. But overall, I thought, as I said in the past week, the amount of mixed tags we have with Almas and Vega and Lana and Rusev, and then Brie and Bryan and Miz and Maurice. You could have gone and done an 8-person tag at one of these big shows or Survivor Series even. You had, so if they were sticking around, but I can understand Maurice going back home. She's not really an in-ring worker anyways. So it was fine. It added an element for a little bit to make it more personal by bringing the families into it, but they don't need it.
Yeah, I felt like it deflated a lot of the heat and intensity from the feud by bringing the wives in. I felt like from where this feud was a year ago, like it seemed like a very intense thing. You can't wait to see it, to now it just seems like it's just bringing Daniel Bryan down. He seems like less of a star after this whole feud. I can't wait for them to move on from this. I hope Australia is the end, because I think it just hasn't helped Daniel Bryan at all. And you got to wonder what they're going to do. Is it going to be the Miz winning again and then going on to beat AJ? And then they could always do Daniel Bryan coming back, winning the Rumble and facing Miz at Mania for the title. And he's got 3 losses against the Miz in some form. And so he gets a big win there. Or they have Daniel Bryan win, Samoa Joe. And there's a lot of different ways they could go. But I just think this feud has been, the more it goes on, the worse it's been for Bryan.
Yeah, they got to do something, man. And building Australia with everything else is certainly a stretch of WWE storytelling ability at this point.
I do like that stip, though. It does open up a lot of possibilities where they could go. Al, to your point, it did seem like that end was botched because, Maurice. I felt like they just do the same angle where
with the baby,
yeah. So it's very similar, but. Yeah, when Miz, when Maurice was faking it and Miz came back and then he came at her again, I couldn't tell if she was supposed to actually be taking a bump there or if she was supposed to be missing it. That whole ending seemed awkward.
Yeah, and it just makes me think of one of the more peculiar things about Hell in a Cell was, I thought that the build up to Bryan and Miz at SummerSlam was really strong. They did a good job of telling the backstory, years of backstory. I thought the match itself was fine, and then circumstance has it that a month later is Hell in a Cell. It's kind of the perfect venue for this super intense feud, as it would have been for Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. And they didn't go that route with either of those matches, two matches that I think are among like the most personal feuds. Instead, they went with this gimmick tag match that I think, to your guys' point, really kind of took the whole thing down a notch. And I thought some of the build up to it was fine. But going back to my earlier point, but by necessity, that put Daniel Bryan in a match that probably wasn't going to be as good as if it was just him and The Miz, because not only was it two women, but it was two of, in Bree's case, she's certainly experienced, but not the crispest, cleanest worker, I think it's fair to say. And with Maurice, I don't think anybody's even kind of faking it. I mean, she's really not a wrestler. So. You took a super red hot feud and a match featuring one of the best wrestlers in the world. And, I think they kind of squandered it.
It's funny. You mentioned how she's really not a wrestler. I pretty much agree. And she's one of the longest reigning Divas champions of all time. And Maurice is, but times have changed.
And I think she's fantastic. I mean, I think what she does really, really well.
She has added a lot to the Miz character. Yeah. Without needing to be in the ring.
Yeah. And hey, sweet gig if you can get it. I think most would rather be able to add that much to a storyline without having to take bumps. Yeah. Kofi Kingston versus Cesaro. Big E out doing a little Crocodile Hunter shout out last night in advance of their trip to Australia. We're going to see New Day versus The Bar for the SmackDown Tag Team Championship at the Super Showdown in Australia. Al, what'd you think of this match last night?
It was a match. I don't know if I was surprised to see Cesaro go over as clean as he did. But that the SmackDown tag division is actually fairly deep. I mean, I watching a mixed match challenge last night. They did a whole video package on Jimmy Uso, who was teaming with Naomi, and it's like, oh yeah, the Usos. I forgot about them. They're really good too. And then you add in The Bar, and you add in, well, I guess the Bludgeon Brothers are on kind of a hiatus right now. New Day. I think maybe one of the more untold stories is that they actually do have a lot of options for that division right now, and a lot of good matches. Right? I mean, you mix almost any of those teams up in a combination, and get a good chance of getting a pretty decent 3-star match or better.
Justin.
Yeah, I mean, Kofi and Cesaro are reliable, good match. You're not going to really get a bad match out of those two with anybody. But it's kind of, there is depth. Sanity is another one who on SmackDown. There is depth. I'm a New Day fan. I mean, and it's remarkable in this day and age. I mean, they've been together for like 3-4 years, and that's an eternity in today's wrestling world. I feel like I don't know, other than, like I said, other than them splitting and having some singles runs while still being the New Day a group, but having some individual single runs, I feel like I've seen every tag match combination possible. I feel like I've heard every New Day promo, and I just don't know. I just don't know what else I want to see out of them tag wise. Like I said, so I would like to see. Okay, let's let Kofi or Xavier Woods go for a mid card. Let's let Big E potentially be positioned to be considered for top of the card, or whatever they want to do. That's all I can see left if they're going to keep New Day intact. I don't really get excited for any of their tag matches right now. Not because it's not going to be a good bell to bell match, but I'm not invested in the story because I feel like I've seen it all at this point.
Raj, when the history of New Day is written, will the pancakes be when they jump the shark?
They're still super over. I agree that I'm so surprised that they haven't tried to pull Big E out as a singles yet. And it's like what you said, Justin, keep them a group like they do with Drew and Dolph, where they're a team, but they also do their own thing. I'm so surprised that they haven't done that. Glenn, I mean, we've talked about this so much as far as every tag team feud has this same formula where they do the singles matches. The champions lose the singles matches. They trade a couple victories, and then boom, you do the same thing the next time around. So in that case, I'm just tired of the same formula. One thing that kind of depresses me with Kofi versus Cesaro is that, remember when Cesaro was getting that big push in 2014? He won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. The next night on Raw, Hulk Hogan endorsed him. He was getting that big push. He was put with Heyman. It looked like he was going to be the next big star. And then a few months later, he lost twice to Kofi Kingston on Raw. And that was the public way of saying, we've given up on this guy. So I don't know why, but whenever I see Cesaro and Kofi, it always just reminds me of that. He was a guy that seemed like a breakout star, and they just gave up on him. The matches to Kofi were the public acknowledgement of that.
Well, Cesaro did win last night with the neutralizer. He did get the pin. So, I'm assuming New Day will probably retain in Australia. Set up last night between Lana and Aiden English, setting up that things might be amiss between Aiden and Rusev in advance of the match. We had Randy Orton in the production truck. Jesus Christ. This whole thing demanding that he show him again and again the footage of him with the screwdriver and Jeff Hardy's earlobe.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you got a phone. Just go on the network.
WWE Network.
Yeah.
It's Randy's sick fetish. It's not that Randy wants to watch it. He wants to make somebody show it to him. That's what does it for Randy.
And he put his hands on him. Poor guy.
Oh man, just please give us something new here. But I think they're just in love with this. I think they're just in love with Randy having at it with Hardy's piercings.
Well,
Vince is probably going.
They're teasing that. I mean, they basically said that thing is done. Orton was teasing someone. Yeah, he was teasing his next victim. Remember, he said, "It's nothing compared to what I'm going to do to my next victim." So
I don't know what kind of piercings does Shinsuke Nakamura have that we don't know about.
I don't think it's gonna be Nakamura. I think it's got to be a baby face. So that
get Albert out of retirement.
Who's
Albert? Yeah.
But who do you guys think Orton was referring to? I mean, it's kind of a short list, right? It's AJ, Daniel Bryan.
Oh.
And he's got a match in a few weeks, so chances are they wouldn't do anything until after that's done. I mean, they could have Orton interfere in that match, leading to a Miz victory. But yeah, it's like AJ and Daniel Bryan, right? Who else really is there?
I'm a little surprised that they would. I mean, not that I'd complain about it, but I did think there was a little gas left in the tank for Hardy and Orton. I mean, it was only when did actually
this was their first pay-per-view match.
Yeah, and in as much as Randy went over, you'd think they'd give Jeff the chance to avenge that loss. Maybe they still do. So I wouldn't be surprised for them to see them go back to this at least one more time.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed pretty decisive, and plus, it just seemed like this was a feud designed for Orton to win. And yeah, so by the way, Hardy was back in action the next night at a live event, a SmackDown live event. So
kayfabe is ruined.
Yeah, they didn't sell that.
Did he sell the ear at the live event?
He was working like he was hurt from the night before, but I don't know if he sold the ear. Actually.
I wonder if they could do something. I mean, Matt's talked about he all but announced his retirement earlier this week. I wonder if they could do some angle on TV where Randy essentially retires Matt, and that adds some fuel to the feud with Jeff.
That would be a really good idea if Orton's responsible for heart, because so many times when someone retires, it's quiet, and that's what it seemed like Matt was going to be. Like they don't do anything on TV for it. But if they made did turn it into a storyline, that would be really cool.
Yeah, Randy show up on Raw maybe and beat the hell out of Matt, and
you just do it faster. Or you just do a backstage segment where Hardy's visiting Jeff, at SmackDown, and then all of a sudden you see later Orton's just beating the crap out of Hardy and does something dastardly.
Yeah. How messed up does Matt Hardy have to be that he didn't get a retirement match?
Well, who gets a retirement match? I mean, Christian never got one. Mark Henry never got. I mean, very few people do. Edge was world champion at the time when he got his, so he was like forced to retire as champion. So, they made a bigger deal out of it. But there's not many people they do that with.
And I don't think we've seen the last match of Matt anyways. So
I kind of agree.
Yeah, well, we're talking about live events. Speaking of live events, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, SeatGeek. Oh, getting tickets online. Oh, is it complicated? Waking up early, trying to navigate different sites, different pre-sale codes, hundreds of sites, varying levels of reliability. It's hard to know who to trust or what the best strategy is, and that's why SeatGeek is the way to go. SeatGeek pulls in millions of tickets into one place, so you can easily find the seats that you want for the price that you are willing to pay. There's nothing quite like being there in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a fantastic value. Now, SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. They search multiple ticket sites and grade every ticket based on value. This way, they help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. SeatGeek should be your go-to source for everything from sports to concerts to comedy to the theater. I have SeatGeek on my phone. It is actually the easiest way I found to shop for tickets. I tell the story. I found SeatGeek. I fell in love with SeatGeek back 2 years ago when I bought tickets for Hamilton. Was trying to get seats, sold out show. SeatGeek got me in, got me fantastic seats at a great value, and I've been using them ever since. Oh, the concerts I have seen. Everything from Bananarama to Matt and Kim to Buster Poindexter. How did I get there? SeatGeek. Absolutely love it. Raj, you've used it both for Lady Gaga to Bon Jovi to the Broncos. You are a man of range yourself. And
it's
yeah,
right
it's
here
for you.
And, I live in Denver. The top two events right now when I go to it are the Raw and SmackDown this coming Monday and Tuesday that are in Denver at the Pepsi Center.
Nice.
So it's easy to use, I use it all the time. I haven't decided if I'm going to Raw and SmackDown yet. But the SeatGeek, it works. It's great for NXT, WWE, pro wrestling. As you said, the theater. I used it for Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi, Lady Gaga. It's definitely a great app, and it's my go-to now. So that's all I use.
Absolutely. And, because that's the thing. I'm tired of waking up, figuring out the pre-sale code, doing all of that. I'm just going to get my tickets on SeatGeek from now on. I encourage you to do so as well. And we've got a special offer for our listeners. You can get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code INC today. That's promo code INC for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets, and we thank them for sponsoring the Wrestling Inc. podcast. So, Rusev versus Shinsuke Nakamura, perhaps not a notable match in and of itself for the U.S. title, but notable what happened after, where Aiden turned and started beating on Rusev. End of an era, Al. Will you remember this moment forever?
I thought it was, as far as splits go, it was well done, and it was memorable. You imagine they get a few matches out of it, but you can't think that this bodes too well for Aiden English. I mean, Aiden English without the whole Rusev Day infrastructure kind of support team, I don't know how valuable he is to WWE. So this feels like the kind of thing where they get a couple matches out of it, and then Rusev moves on to whatever he does. Maybe we see Aiden English on Main Event or something like that for a while, and then maybe we don't see him.
He's a survivor, man. After the Vaudevillains split, people are like, oh, poor Aiden English. Better go get Jack Gallagher, Vaudevillains 2.0. I'm just saying, I don't underestimate the guy.
Yeah, I think he's a talented guy, but it's hard to... I got to say, as fun as the Rusev Day angle was, I do feel like if it didn't completely wear out its welcome, it was starting to. So I think timing wise, maybe it is the right time to move on. I think Rusev and Lana have such obviously a natural chemistry with each other that really is the package. I think that's what works best. I thought Aiden English was fine, but they didn't need him. And in the ring, Aiden is, again, fine. I don't think anything exceptional. But, it could also help Rusev kind of get to the next level, assuming he comes out on the winning end of this feud.
I would hope so. Justin.
Yeah, it was an appropriate turn. It was well done. I like the symbolism of him attacking him with the microphone. So that's that's Aiden's main weapon of choice with his voice and his singing and knocking the Rusev flag off the microphone. And I'm really glad that they made Aiden English the heel out of this. I mean, first off, he actually has a very heelish kind of look. I mean, with the pale skin and I mean, he's he's very chiseled. He's got a scrawny build, but he's got a heel kind of look to him.
Those abs.
Yeah, I mean, but he's got a heel kind of look to him. I mean, I was worried that when the split did happen, that it was going to be the opposite. I was worried that WWE was going to try to have Rusev, since he's the bigger, more commanding looking heel in that regard. I was worried that they were going to have him go heel, which would have just been ass backwards for what the fans want, as well as they're always cheering for Lana as well. So, it's good that they did this. As Al was saying, you get a couple matches out of this, but I think Aiden English, pretty much he's going to go back to being around just for the purpose of they need to fill out 2 live event tours simultaneously for Raw and SmackDown. So that's probably where he's going to be. And that's, but I say that, and that's what I put my betting money on. But then again, he found himself randomly in that Rusev pairing, so maybe they find something else for him. But I don't know. I don't know what that would be. I think he's definitely going to get a little bit of a reset on TV and be taken off for a while.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think to Al's point, I do think that the Rusev and Aiden English pairing had kind of worn out its welcome a while ago. It seemed like now fans were chanting Rusev Dave more because they're supposed to, as opposed to like they're really into it. I think this is the best thing for Rusev. I think Rusev versus Aiden English, though, it sounds kind of like a pre-show match on a pay-per-view. I don't see it going much higher than that. But I hope this is the start of better things for Rusev. I kind of agree. I don't see this boding out well for Aiden in the long term. Glenn, your point, he is a survivor. That's once he survived. We'll have to see what he can do this time, because the singing gimmick and everything, he's been doing it for a while. I hope they find something for him, because I do think he's pretty talented. He's unique, and I'd like to see it. Him do something, but I almost feel like I just see him either off TV for a while or put in another tag team.
You don't think Simon Gotch is going to come back, surprise return?
I don't think so. I think that would really bring him down. You saw what they were doing with them before.
True. Yeah, man. Yeah, I like Aiden a lot. Although it is interesting, he just launched a YouTube channel, Wrestling with Whiskey. Sometimes I wonder, when wrestlers start doing more outside of the WWE, they feel like, oh, hey, I might need to diversify.
Smart. So many of these guys diversify, not necessarily on the front end, but as far as real estate and things like that, owning gyms. So it's smart.
Or when they start using their real names on their Twitter handle.
That's everyone now. I mean, it does. Everyone.
Really.
Mojo Rawley switched to his real name.
Yeah.
Nia Jax.
I always find. I mean, but that also is. I mean, it's smart. I mean, especially if they're trying to get branded in other media, they're trying to do movies and stuff like that. It's smart to I guess make people aware of what your real name is if WWE's going to own your
absolutely
name. But
God, it would be a great network show, but they would never do it. I would love a show, The Side Hustle of WWE Superstars. I want to see Heath Slater working with his wife on her.
Hosted by Zack Ryder.
Yeah, absolutely. Fandango.
Xavier Woods and his video game channel, Up, Down, Down. I think he might be making more money off of that than WWE.
Could be.
Yeah, Fandango's flipping houses. Heath Slater's pushing his wife's multi-level marketing makeup thing she's doing.
Fandango's flipping houses.
He's involved with the wrestling school, Heath Slater,
Yeah.
In Atlanta.
Yeah, the network would never do that, but I would watch the hell out of that show. Man. Andrade Cien Almas versus AJ Styles, non-title match last night. Andrade out with Zelina Vega, and I think we all knew where this was going. I thought the match was pretty darn good. Love that sequence AJ did into the finish there with the Styles clash.
That was insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what went down there exactly? He was in a pin position and then somehow reversed that into fully standing.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah. It was like the reverse of the rolling Yoshi tonic that Sami Zayn does with the power bomb 360. It was like a reverse version of that, where AJ was sitting on him and then got up and then
flipped him backwards.
Yeah, watch that. That was so cool last night. High point of the year as far as sequences go, for sure. But the match itself, Al, what did you think of that?
I thought it was a really good match. I'm a little concerned, or even a lot concerned, about this usage of Andrade Cien Almas. I feel like they know they can get a good match out of him because he's a super talent, but they don't think that any of these pairings are special enough to wait on. So we've already seen him in what should be maybe dream matches or overstating things, but paired with what would probably be his best opponents on SmackDown in matches that, you know, a little more than a throwaway match if you're talking about the main event of SmackDown, but no build, no real storyline. It's just, who could we put AJ in there to have a really good match with? And they're right, because Andrade is fantastic, but I don't like him being put in this position where it's just about filling a slot without really much of a storyline or anything to advance him. I think Andrade could be one of the guys who they look to as the future of SmackDown, one of the future headliners in a world title program. And if you're going to do that, I don't know if it's the best idea to just be kind of blowing through these matches where he's and having him lose pretty decisively on a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of weird that they've made him, I don't want to say like high-level enhancement talent, but it does seem that that's his role lately. He hasn't gotten a real push, right? I mean, I guess this is a push, but if you're not winning and there's no title on the line, Justin?
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, Al makes fair points, but I'm going to disagree because, you know, I think if you want to look, if you want to weigh the options here, I think it's a lot better for him to be getting put in matches with Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles and getting these 2-segment matches that are very competitive. He's got, you know, near falls, chances to win, or at least making it seem like he has chances to win, versus him getting repetitive week after week BS wins over Ty Dillinger or whatever with no real purpose. You know, I think in a year from now, you know, who's going to remember what his win-loss record was? All they're going to remember is, wow, he had some great matches against A-level talent.
Yeah, and I'm going to disagree with you there, Justin, in the sense that at some point when WWE gets used to booking you to lose, you're kind of get stuck in that position. It can be hard to get above it. We've seen it time and time again. How often do we see people that lose week in, week out go on to become
but who are they losing to, and what fashion is the match? I mean, he's being put in. I mean, he's been on the main roster for a very short time when you really think about it. I mean, and when it was like the constant delay of seeing him even do anything. You know, we've got a few vignettes and promos with him and Zelina. So, you know, it's like he proved himself in one of those matches. I don't know if it was against Bryan. It's like he proved himself, and all of a sudden they now have him as reliable. I see what you're saying, Raj, but there's a difference between getting booked nonstop to be the throwaway 4-minute, 5-minute TV loss versus you're getting, again, 20 minutes and you're in the best match of the 2-hour show every single week.
Yeah, but you got to be thrown a bone here and there. Otherwise, people just get used to you losing. You know, it's like Sting and Ric Flair. It's one thing if, and granted, they went to a draw, but, you know, when Sting's first coming up, if Ric Flair beats Sting in a classic, it helps Sting for sure. But if Ric Flair keeps beating Sting, after a while, it stops helping Sting. You know, at some point, Almas has got to get something. He's got to get a big win, and soon, I think, because I think fans are getting used to him being the guy that's going to have a good match but lose. And
if he is a heel, he should only be winning if Zelina's helping him. He's a heel.
Yeah, so let Zelina help him. Right. You know, like give him something, because, you know, SmackDown's, you got Randy Orton, who's been a killer heel. He's like the most important heel right now. Samoa Joe's, I feel like, has been knocked down a couple pegs, and then who else you got on the heel side? So I think Almas can really you know, fill in that space. You just got to give him a real storyline. I mean, I think him and Rusev could get there, but the way WWE books their feuds a lot is them just trading wins back and forth and then going to a pay-per-view and blow it off. Give them some sort of storyline that fans could get into, and something more heated, as opposed to just the standard booking of back and forth. And
maybe a Jeff Hardy works there.
Jeff Hardy would be great. Yeah, actually, that would be really good.
Oh man! So after that, Samoa Joe attacked AJ, telling him he will never be safe.
Samoa Joe's got to cut his hair or something. He's looking kind of. Isn't that kind of distracting a little bit?
It's a weird haircut.
It looks kind of goofy. It's I don't know. It just doesn't look like that. He looks a little comical right now.
Well, I mean, so over the top lately. I think it kind of works, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Australia. Joe versus AJ.
You think they let Joe win?
Hope so. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, it's not going to happen. I think it'd be great. Well, no one wants to see Joe as the champ but me.
I do. I like AJ so much, and I don't know. Maybe it doesn't mean that much, but I like at least the idea of him having a record-setting reign. Not because of the record, because but more because I think it is a good thing for WWE every once in a while to just stick with someone for a long time. I mean, you think about the long-term champions we had when we were growing up, and I don't know that you do it for the sake of doing it, but AJ does seem like the kind of guy who you would do that with. And granted, I mean, they were already at whatever 10, 11 months, so it really already has been a long-term title reign, and certainly I don't have a problem with Joe wearing the world title, but I mean, yeah, it'd be a little bittersweet to see AJ drop it. And you worry a little bit about what becomes of AJ. I'm sure he would stay in that that top tier. Then again, even as the champion, he's not main eventing shows, so how much more could he drop without the title?
Yeah, I want to see them tweak Samoa Joe's gimmick and just have him, pull like an LL Cool J and go after every guy's wife in the company. And that could sort of be his thing. An aspect to the feud.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you wanted that, maybe after Bryan loses to Miz, maybe Joe goes after Brie Bella.
Yes,
no, I don't mean about the wives, but should Joe win the title?
Oh, no.
I don't think so either.
No. Like I said, I mean, this stuff does matter. If AJ's on the cover of the video game comes out next month. I mean, I don't see him dropping the title in this calendar year.
I kind of just don't think that WWE sees Joe as a champion, even though they don't push the WWE championship as hard as the Universal title. I just get the feeling that they don't see Joe as filling that role.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with and we talked about this earlier with having AJ hold on to the title is that it limits the finishes that you could have on his matches, right? I mean, and that's why we've seen so many of these feuds be prolonged by these wacky non-finishes. I don't want to see that. Another one, I mean, I think that's what ruined the feud with Nakamura was that they could not just put on a match. Everything had to be some kind of wacky finish. And they would risk doing that again with Joe. So the upside of putting the title on Joe is that you could have a real finish, and you've got something to keep AJ going, right? A way to naturally prolong the feud with AJ then on the hunt, chasing for the title rather than defending it.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. And even if Joe doesn't win, I'm just saying the going after guys' wives gimmick, that can work either way as a challenger. You could go on to Brie and go on to Maurice, and then ultimately Linda McMahon, she's lonely in Washington. Joe's going to go and pay her a visit. It writes itself.
I think that's
but he'll need to get a haircut first.
Yes.
I think that's a better gimmick for like Dolph Ziggler. He's more of the wives stealer, I would feel, in this character.
That's why it's not Joe's character, because it makes it more menacing. It's like this idea. It's like, well, clearly this does not sound consensual. That's what gives it that level of venom to it. Anyhow, so I would have thought this was the match before we went to the Becky Charlotte segment, but then no, Billie Kay versus Asuka. This was such a weird pace. So just weirdly placed on the card last night. But they had Asuka and Naomi backstage. They're building up this match against the Iconics for Australia. Al, what do you think of this pairing of Asuka and Naomi?
This has been the low point of SmackDown for me for the last several weeks. I mean, it's some of it's even kind of cringeworthy. I think it's pretty bad television, and with some of the characters involved, you don't mind it as much. I mean, the reality is that I don't know if the Iconics or Naomi are all that high in the pecking order right now, but when you see Asuka in something like this, it is really disconcerting.
Yeah, this kind of feels like, I mean, it's inevitable. We're going to get a women's tag title sooner than later, probably, around Evolution. And, this kind of feels like this is just, okay, we need to start to build some depth and we need to create some women's tag teams. They already have the Iconics, so let's put Asuka and Naomi too that have very colorful glow imagery. I mean, that's all this feels like, is they're just starting to it was the same reason why they brought the Riot Squad up, as well as the other trio of girls who I'm blanking on at the moment. It's the same reason they brought them up at the end of 2017. It was just so they needed to have enough girls established on TV to fill out a Royal Rumble. That's what this feels like here, is just to start to develop depth.
Yeah. And I think the Iconics just get the wrong kind of heat. There's a way to get, like AJ Lee when she was a heel, there's a way to get heat from the crowd. And then there's Jillian Hall, where you're entertaining, whatever, you're getting attention, but it's not moving you up the card. And I think Iconics get that kind of go away heat. Yeah.
So Asuka, of course, dropped Billie into the Asuka lock.
Doesn't really make you want to see that tag match, does it?
I would thought they would have did something better for the Iconics in Australia.
And then maybe they'll win.
Yeah, maybe that's how it goes. I mean, yeah, it's just so weird. Asuka's trajectory in the last 6 months.
Another one. I mean, I mentioned AJ and Daniel Bryan and Joe and Nakamura as these kind of sure things that you almost have to work hard to botch it, and somehow they have. And Asuka might be the worst of all.
Yeah. Think about where she was the last time the mixed match challenge was on. Like, it was such a given that the odds were so in favor of Asuka and the Miz because of Asuka, because of how much she was protected. And here we are months later.
Yeah. Becky Lynch, Paige in the ring, debuting Becky's SmackDown Women's title with the side plates on it. Charlotte comes to the ring. Becky's taunting her, saying, congratulate me, raise my hand. No, I don't want that. I just want you to call me queen. Charlotte attacks Becky after Becky calls her a bitch. They really, is this how Vince and the writers think? Just that's the worst thing a woman could say to another woman.
Bitch and coward are their buzzwords, right? Like, coward is all the word that the guys use, and bitch is what the girls use. Jesus,
you should hear my wife when we're in the car in traffic and she's yelling at other drivers and only I can hear her. I mean, you want to hear how women talk to other women. I mean, God, this was mild last night, but hey, it set Charlotte off.
Let's think of the vocabulary we have from the women. We have bitch, we have coward, we have gumption from Ronda Rousey on Monday.
Right. Well, coward is for the men. The men have been using. Daniel Bryan uses coward like every other week, but gumption and yes, gumption and bitch.
Women have a different C word they could use if they choose to.
Yeah, Vince needs to start listening to modern hip hop or something. I don't know. He just needs to get some new ideas in his vocabulary.
I guarantee he's not listening to modern hip hop.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Oh, could you imagine? I thought this was cool last night. Becky, they've tweaked it. So Justin, I saw your tweet. You're down with Becky at this level of being more heelish.
Yeah, I mean, I panicked and I was all up in arms. It was in Brooklyn for SummerSlam week, and I was all up in arms with how everything went down. And then, of course, the running down the fans promo that Becky did on the SmackDown after SummerSlam, I just couldn't get behind that. But I will say, every week since then, it's won me over a little bit more. And last night, I really, from as we're laughing about them using the word bitch, it was because they obviously don't do a lot of cursing. Obviously, it stands out, and it was nicely timed. Having Charlotte with her back turn and. I'm really behind it. I'm behind Becky's and everything. The wearing the dark leather now, the facial expression, the constant scowl. I love you put the belt around my waist. I mean, I just I like the aggression. I guess I don't even want to say heel turn because there's open interpretation with the fan reaction, but I'll just say I like the character change. I like the aggression to her. Yeah, I'm for it. I'm all for it.
Nice. Al, how's this working for you?
Yeah, I really agree. I think some of the whole debate about whether she should have been turned heel or not and how over she was as a babyface was a little overblown. I mean, I think you can only make so much out of a New York crowd. I mean, you always have to kind of consider them separately, kind of in isolation, and not necessarily dictate your storyline direction by a rogue crowd. And I agree. I was at that SmackDown where she kind of tried too hard. It was very forced when she started tearing down the fans. But right, since then, I think it's been a much more kind of organic heel turn. And I think Becky Lynch, even put aside the title win, Becky Lynch right now as a character, as how much TV time she's getting, is in a much better place than she was before SummerSlam, where there was a contingent of fans that was so dismayed that you would, squander all the love and popularity she had among her fans. I mean, I think it was a little overblown how over she was then, and I think she's much more over now.
Yeah, I agree. I think I know people ripping WWE's booking of Becky, but she is way more effective right now than she's been the entire time she's been on the roster. She's way more over right now than she's been the entire time. Before, she was a nice, friendly face that fans seemed to like, but she wasn't in anything juicy. Fans weren't really into her.
It's almost Bailey.
Yeah, it was kind of that polite applause. But now they seem really into her, and keep her with this heelish thing, whatever it is. I would not have her start teaming with heels against baby faces. Just kind of keep her in that neutral territory for now. See which way the fans go. But this character is working for her. I think she needs to change her music. It's a little too happy, cheery for her character right now. But I like it. I thought her promo was great. It was interesting that they had her just beat the crap out of Charlotte. Becky calls her a bitch and then kicks the crap out of her pretty clean. And Charlotte's definitely positioned as a babyface, and she gets beat up. So I like, and which I thought was it was effective. And so I liked it. I like this segment. I think Becky is they're onto something with her. I think she could be a huge star.
Well, a week from Saturday,
one facing Rousey at WrestleMania.
From your lips to God's ears, I hope that's the case.
If they keep on this path, I definitely could see that.
Well, especially with Becky doing an armbar.
Yeah, I think, and again, I love Becky, but I think more Survivor Series, Royal Rumble. That's the match. Like Becky built up all this to lose to Ronda, and then Ronda to Charlotte at Mania. Maybe
it could be. I mean, that could be their current plan, is for her just to switch, just to switch it back to Charlotte. But
yeah,
Charlotte's not really knocking him dead right now.
Okay, let's have a real talk about this. Has Charlotte ever, forget the ring work? Ring work, I think she's very athletic, very good. But Charlotte as a character, has Charlotte as a character ever resonated with you fully, where you're like, that's the one, that's the best woman in the company, that they should make the face of the women's division?
As a heel, I thought she did when she was feuding with Sasha. I thought she came across as such a big star, and just completely, her and Sasha just came across as above everyone else. They kind of buried Sasha. I don't know if buried's the right word, but they brought Sasha down a lot. But during that period, I did. And then since she's been a babyface, I agree. I don't think so at all. No.
Yeah, Al?
Yeah, I totally agree. She's a little miscast as a babyface, and I don't think she's a bad babyface. I just don't think she really stands out. I mean, she kind of blends into the background, but she's adequate. It was during her heel run a year or two ago where and I mean, maybe it's unfair to always be making these comparisons, but where you really saw the flair in her come out, and she really seemed like the heir to her father's legacy. And I think that's carried her a lot. I mean, not just the name, but I think that WWE, somewhat rightfully so, is enamored with the idea that the daughter of the greatest wrestler of all time could be the greatest woman wrestler of all time. Now, I'm not saying that she is, but I think they think that she is on pace to being, and that match of the daughter of Ric Flair and the sensation that is Ronda Rousey is the one match that you could try to sell as a WrestleMania main event featuring women. But they've got a ways to go, and it might mean turning Charlotte back to that character before Mania, and a good deal before Mania. I don't know that you could do that a month or two before you talk about the Royal Rumble. It might be something that they should start to lay the groundwork on now. But as long as Becky, they're trying to get her over as a heel, I imagine any plans to also turn Charlotte heel are going to be put on hold.
And there is some weird shorthand there. I find when I talk about the women's division in the WWE to people that do not watch the shows currently, when I say Ronda Rousey and then Ric Flair's daughter, gets people interested. People get that. People understand that. People want to see that. Justin, your final thought on Charlotte as a face before we wrap things up here and talk about the PWI 500.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of her as a face. I mean, look, she's really good. Charlotte is, and obviously she brings some mainstream attention because of the family. But I do think there's a lot of things that feel very manufactured, very forced. Obviously, the amount of title wins she's had certainly seems like they're trying to race and get her to get her to at a high title reign number like her father. I think to all the fans who always think, oh, isn't it great when we have second and third generation? This is why. Look, you didn't see Curtis Axel work out to be Mr. Perfect Part 2. You didn't see Ted DiBiase work out to be Ted, the $1 Million Man Part 2, or at least not as well as everybody thought. I think the same thing happens with Charlotte. Charlotte's going to survive, and she's going to she's already had a good career so far. But I constantly just feel like, okay, it's just an attempt to have a female Ric Flair, and after a while, I think it does make her. I think it does put her in conversation sometimes that I don't know if she belongs. I think it does give her a little bit of an overrated factor at times. She's good in the ring. She's an athlete, but I don't hold her at the heights that other people do.
Right. And did you guys watch Mixed Match Challenge?
I did.
Okay. I did. So Al, do you need to run at 1? Did you need to run in 10 minutes after we talk about the PWI?
No, I'm okay for a little while. Yep.
Okay, cool. We'll talk about Mixed Match Challenge then after PWI 500, and then we'll get into some of this news. There's actually a ton of it over the past couple of days.
Yeah, so let's talk about the PWI 500. I'll give everyone a breakdown.
Well, it's our, I think, 28th year,
Wow.
and the issue is available now. The digital edition is available now, and the print edition should be coming out any day now. I think subscribers maybe getting in a mailbox today or over the next couple days. Kenny Omega is #1. That's the big headline of this year's issue. It's the first time in the 28 years that a WWE wrestler has not been featured in the #1 spot for back-to-back years. Last year, Okada being our #1. So second year having a New Japan star in the top slot. I was just talking to my podcast co-host, Dan Murphy, who's got a lot to do with the PWI 500, carries a lot of it on his shoulders. And I think we agree that, this list is always going to create controversy, always going to create a debate. But this is probably as positive feedback as we've gotten. And some of that is just a lack of feedback. We don't have people complaining and screaming and cursing us out. So I feel like this went down pretty easily.
So what is the criteria now for best wrestler? Because look, 1998 in ring, you could say Dean Malenko was the best wrestler in wrestling, right? But that would be absolutely absurd for Dean Malenko to be ranked #1 when Steve Austin, when Steve Austin's running wild, he's super over, he's moving numbers. You got millions watching Austin, and caring about him, and he's moving the needle as opposed to in ring and just in ring. So what is the criteria? Is it because there's obviously going to be a big difference between picking someone from New Japan over WWE when you got, at least domestically, hundreds of thousands of people that are watching New Japan as opposed to millions and millions for WWE. So how is that weighted, do you think?
Well, the one thing that I think really kind of shields us from criticism to some extent is that there is a criteria, and so it's not a popularity contest. It's not who's the most over right now. It's not who the best technical wrestler in the world is right now. It's a term that we're not crazy about, but it's probably as accurate as anything. It's a kayfabe list, right? So, and I think we're really proud of that. With wins and losses being dealt with so kind of flippantly by wrestling promoters these days, this is the one place where we say, well, wins and losses matter, and it's not the only criteria. And we spell out our criteria. I don't have it in front of me, but it has to do with win-loss records, titles won, quality of competition, skill, technical skill, that kind of thing weighs in there too. But when we're evaluating any of these wrestlers, I think it's fair to say that the first thing we do is pull up essentially their win-loss record. Let's see how they did. And sometimes guys who you think are going to be really strong #1 candidates or in the top mix, just because of the way they're featured, you go over their year, and sometimes a big win that you remember wasn't in the evaluation period. Maybe it was just before it or just after it, or maybe a guy is featured a whole lot and is main eventing a lot and is really kind of the face of a promotion, but isn't winning a whole lot. And that factors in there too. So, I wasn't around when they made the Dean Malenko decision 21 years ago now. I guess it is. If some of the people who had a hand in that decision had to do over again, they wouldn't have gone that route, because people always bring that one up. They bring up the Miz, and I'll defend the Miz a little more. I did have something to do with that one back in 2011, and I think we've been kind of proven right over the years with some of what we said about the Miz. But with this list, we had AJ Styles slotted into number one for a while. The group met, the editorial staff, and we hammered this out after a couple of days, and we put down the list, and we felt pretty good about, we've got a solid number one. It was a few days after that, still within the evaluation period, that Omega won the IWGP title from Okada, and it was enough for us to reconvene and talk about it. And as a group, we decided that it was enough for him to move into that top spot.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with it. I mean, it's always just interesting what you consider the best wrestler to be, because it isn't just in ring. There's promos, there's getting people to care, there's star power, there's charisma. But I do think, when I think of wrestlers that have made a difference over the past year, I think Jericho tops that list as far as really getting wrestling fans to care. When I think of big money matches, Roman Reigns is at that top of that list because he's headlined more WWE pay-per-views, and WWE is by far the top dog. The best matches has been Kenny Omega, or with Okada up there as well. But yeah, it's always just interesting where you draw from. But that I think most people agree with this list that Kenny Omega deserves to be at the top.
And I gotta give
and the reality is, I imagine a lot of our readers, I mean, we've dealt with this somewhat over the years, certainly last year, a lot of our readers don't even know who Kenny Omega is. I mean, I think sometimes in our world you take for granted, but go to your neighborhood WWE house show and look at the fans around you, and there is a good chance that half or more of the people in the building do not know who Kenny Omega is. That's and there's a reality when we make these issues that it maybe doesn't weigh into our decision, but it is a consideration that, are we going to put a guy on the cover of our magazine who a lot of fans don't even know who he is?
Well, and you talked about not getting as much backlash, and it's wise because you put, Omega's fans are the most vocal, so they'll be the ones that if you put Roman Reigns or somebody like that at number one, you will hear more backlash from them. But I gotta give you guys credit, Al, because I work in the independent wrestling scene, based here in Pittsburgh, and the publication and the list itself has such a lengthy history now. It has such credibility that I hear guys in the locker room, some guys who made it on to the 500 and others who haven't, who of course set a goal to be. And I hear them talking, and they start knowing it's that time of year for the list to come out. And I've seen several. I don't know, maybe you've seen it too. I've seen several of these independent wrestlers who I'm friends with also on their Facebook account, and they've been able to Photoshop their name to make it as 501 or 502.
Some have had shirts made with their rankings and stuff. So that's really rewarding. I mean, look, we don't fool ourselves that Roman Reigns is losing a lot of sleep over being whatever he is this year. I forget, 6 instead of 5 or what have you. But for those guys, the independent workers in particular, the guys who you're going to find in that 300 to 500 range, we know it means a lot to them. And even with, and I make this point a lot, even with spaces for 500 different wrestlers, the reality is that the universe of pro wrestlers is a lot bigger than 500 people. You're talking in the United States alone, thousands upon thousands of people who consider themselves pro wrestlers, whether they do it on weekend or they do it full time. And if you expand that internationally, which our list does consider wrestlers from all over the world, it's even bigger. So just making this 500 wherever you are, if you're 498, that's still something to be really proud of. And you're on this list. And another thing that I think is really cool, especially when you look at, grab all your old PWI 500s and put them in front of you. And to some extent, we have to do that when we put together the issue every year. And one of my jobs is the top 10 guys. I do the top 10 write-ups. And for those guys, we track every ranking that they've ever had. So it's like path to whatever, number 1, number 2. And it takes a little homework to find out when's the first time they were ranked. Sometimes it's 15 years ago. And it's really cool to see that progression where a guy, his first year, or probably not even his first year. The reality is, in most cases, a guy will work for several years before he's ranked at all. And maybe he debuts in that 400 range. And then a year later jumps 50 spots. And a year after that jumps 100 spots. And then maybe drops down a few spots, and then all the way up to top 10 or even number 1. I mean, I think Kenny Omega is actually a good example of that. I don't have it in front of me, but you're talking a guy who has been on this list for a long time. A couple of years probably was off the list, and now all the way up to number 1.
Al, let me ask you. So, based upon that criteria of the wins and losses mattering, does it matter the volume, or does it just matter the win-loss record? And I ask because if we keep going the way we're going right now in WWE, it's very possible that when next year's list comes out, that based upon win-loss record, if it doesn't matter how many matches, that Ronda Rousey could be right up in the top.
Well, we a couple of points on that. Women aren't ranked on the 500. We do have a separate issue. It's the issue after this. No, but it's fine because we have an issue after this. It was exactly. For a long time, it was the female 50, which we started, I forget how long. It's within the last 10 years. And the thought was, in the days of the lingerie pillow fights, 50 was more than enough. And with the whole women's revolution, for Dan Murphy, who really handles that largely on his own, has been pushing for years for more. 50 doesn't begin to give you enough space to adequately rank these women. So this is the first year that we're doing the women's 100, doubling the amount of spaces we'll have for the women. That's the following issue. But I think an example of what you're talking about, we dealt with this year, and that's Brock Lesnar. We do have a criteria for what it means to be active. And in the past, for many years, it was just kind of a gut feeling, and it was like, well, we didn't see that much of this guy, and to avoid that, some years back we actually created a standard that escapes me at the time, but I think it's something like 12 matches over the evaluation period, or at least 1 match in 10 matches of the evaluation period. And Lesnar, for years now, has just kind of barely gotten in there. But is always booked to be so dominant that you can't help but think of him and try to rank him highly. And this year, off of what was his I think most dominant year since his return back in 2012, he's all the way up at number 4, above guys like Roman Reigns. When the reality is, Roman Reigns probably wrestles more matches in a month or less than that, 2 weeks, than Brock Lesnar wrestled over his the whole year. But you can't not take into consideration the kind of historic way that Brock Lesnar was booked, winning every match, and in most cases dominating matches, and not these weren't like those Ryback squash matches from years ago where you'd put him in against 2 jobbers to destroy him. Brock was put in against some of the top talent in the company, and sometimes they were handled like squash matches. I mean, he would run through them. So you had to take that into consideration. And, there was even a debate whether he should be number 1 this year. Ultimately, he landed at number 4.
Yeah. So this year it was Omega number 1, AJ Styles number 2, Okada number 3, Lesnar number 4, and number 5 is escaping me. Was it Reigns?
I think Reigns was a little lower.
Okay.
I really should have it in front of me.
Maybe it's Rollins. I think it's Rollins. Thanks, Joshua.
Yes, that sounds right.
And last year in the women's, Asuka number 1, Charlotte Flair was number 2. I'm guessing Asuka's probably not number 1 this year.
I don't know. Honestly, I think it's a work in progress, and I don't have that much say in that.
Is it Nikki Bella?
Pulling up this year's. It's worth saying, it's fair to say with 500 spots, just about everybody who works for WWE ends up in the PWI 500. There might be some exceptions, but with the women, certainly when it was 50, you had a lot of women who work for WWE, and sometimes in some pretty prominent spots, not at all on the 50. So maybe with having 100 spots, that'll change this year. I've got this year's top 10 in front of me. You said it. Kenny, AJ, Okada, Brock, Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman at 6, Roman Reigns at 7, Cody Rhodes at 8, Naito at 9, and The Miz at 10 for the second year in a row.
There you go. Check it out, everyone. It's out now. The PWI 500. I've been checking it out forever since I was a kid. I've been a big PWI reader forever.
if I can just get the plug-in, it's pwi-online.com is our website. And if folks want to order the print edition, they could do that. They could subscribe, or they could download right there the digital edition. And the digital edition is customized for your mobile device. So it's not just like a PDF. It's especially formatted for your mobile device. It's got a lot of cool features, like you could click on certain wrestlers' profiles and it'll take you to a link of a match or something. And it's also, with this and every issue, it comes out a lot faster. I mean, it's close to a month earlier than the print edition comes out that you could get the digital edition. That's always been a problem for the magazines, is the lag time. This addresses some of that. So by all means, go check it out.
Check it out.
Nice.
Now we are running a little over on time, so let's jump into a couple of these items. The Mixed Match Challenge returned last night. As far as numbers went, it was way lower than the premiere last year, or not last year, this past January. It peaked at 52,400 viewers last night, which was down 61% from the first season, which peaked at 135,600 viewers. But some differences this year. It's now half an hour as opposed to 20 minutes, and now it has 2 matches. It's round robin, so everyone faces everyone. Guys, Al, Glenn, you both watched it. What were you guys' thoughts?
I thought that. I'm sorry, Al. You go first.
Okay, sure. Thanks. One other change that I'll point out, unless otherwise, I haven't heard anything about any kind of charities or anything this year, right? Is that out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's no stakes at all.
Because a scripted tournament or predetermined tournament for charity does seem kind of ridiculous when you think about it.
Yeah, I think nothing is better than that.
I would like to see some kind of stakes, and I know they're talking about, I guess, doing the finale actually on a pay-per-view. Right? I think at TLC they're going to do the finale. So even if it's like the cliched trophy, I mean, I do think it's worth giving them something to work toward. But I gotta say, I kind of like the Mixed Match Challenge. I mean, it's sort of a guilty pleasure, and I think one of the things that is sort of a problem with it is also its charm, and that is that to some extent you feel like everybody involved isn't taking it all that seriously, right? Because of that, there is a kind of atmosphere of wrestlers sort of letting their hair down. Sometimes that works sort of negatively, and there's a lot of comedy, maybe too much comedy, but it's also sort of fun to see the wrestlers. It feels like the matches maybe aren't as produced as much as some of the other matches, that they're really kind of just putting it together on the fly. They're given a finish, and that's it. There's almost a feel of camaraderie. They're having fun with each other, that kind of thing. And again, that cuts both ways. Sometimes it's a little bit much, but it's fun to see them kind of let their hair down and just go in there and put on a match, and an entertaining match. Where I think some of that feel of maybe not taking it too seriously hurts is in the announcing. I mean, I don't know if you could read Michael Cole's body language last night, but it just felt like, do I really have to be here at whatever it is now, 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock, doing this so 50,000 people could be watching it?
Hey, they get paid for those, man. I thought Alexa Bliss being out because of the arm injury and being replaced by Ember Moon was an interesting development, with Ember Moon and Braun Strowman last night taking on Natalya and Kevin Owens. But yeah, doing this same brand thing, I think, is really going to change the flavor this time around. Whereas before, we did see more interbrand matches and matchups. And with this, I think doing it this way and then having the finals from Raw and finals from SmackDown face each other, I don't know that I like that as much, because I feel like we're seeing more of what we're used to seeing of these interactions.
Yeah, I think, Al, to your point, I feel like they should just make a Mixed Match Challenge title. If this is going to be an ongoing thing, they're going to have more seasons of it. I just create a title so that it has some stakes, and then at least those champions the next season, they got to defend it, and it's something. But yeah, Al, I agree with you as far as the wrestlers letting their hair down. It feels like the dark match after a TV taping, where they just kind of goof around and they have fun. And it's fun to watch, but also it's hard. You're not taking this seriously, and then are you going to take the rest of this tournament seriously when they're just kind of having fun and they're catching each other's legs and asking each other to drop their, there's some silly stuff, but it's kind of cool. So it's kind of refreshing here and there to see them, just out there having fun, but it also is extremely fake, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I think it shows a little more with this because in a couple cases last night, so you had AJ and Charlotte teaming up together, and both of them coming off like these really intense, like personal angles on SmackDown. In Charlotte's case, minutes earlier, and there they are, all smiles, kind of having fun, laughing with each other. I'm not sure how to feel about that. I mean, I think even within sort of like their bubble, you can make it work, saying, essentially presenting it as like, this they're letting their hair down. Charlotte gets to take her mind off of this very personal feud for a moment and go out there and do what she loves with a group of wrestlers that she's typically would not be working with. But there can be kind of some issues with tone when you're moving from the really heavy storylines to this thing that is like almost comedy.
Yeah. Let's get into a couple of these other news items. We mentioned Alexa Bliss. She tweaked her arm during her Hell in a Cell match. During her match at Hell in a Cell with Ronda Rousey. It's nothing too serious. She's going to be evaluated, I think, next Monday. And if she's cleared to return, she'll be back in the Mixed Match Challenge. So Ember Moon's a temporary replacement unless Alexa Bliss is not cleared to return. So there's the update on that. The concussion lawsuit against WWE. Konstantin Kairos had, there was a ton of wrestlers who were involved with this lawsuit, and it was thrown out by Judge Vanessa L. Bryant on Monday. Konstantin Kairos sent me a statement saying that he's going to pursue this in the appeals court. Jerry McDevitt, WWE's attorney, sent us a statement basically saying that the attorney should be disbarred. Now, there were issues with the statute of limitations with these lawsuits. And also with how Konstantin Kairos had filed them and being redundant and vague and things like that. So for now, it's thrown out. So that is over unless it gains traction in the appeals. You guys, anything to add with that?
Well, the Alexa Bliss, I'll say this: I hope that I hope that WWE utilizes that. I mean, it only you utilize for Ronda Rousey's appeal and allure to her and her badass.
Yeah.
WWE... And on Alexa Bliss, I mean, sorry, just can we go back to Mixed Match Challenge? I do hope she gets back in it because for what it's worth, her and Braun were the highlight of the first season of Mixed Match Challenge. The chemistry that they had, I thought it was really a lot of fun. The whole kind of playful flirting between the two of them, and I wouldn't mind seeing them revisit that.
Yeah, I agree. Last couple of items. WWE released Mahabila Shira, who's in Impact. He was in the developmental system, had signed on earlier this year, so he is out. As part of the WWE event in Saudi Arabia, they have a World Cup tournament that they announced. So it's going to be, instead of a Greatest Royal Rumble, it's the Greatest King of the Ring. We'll see how that goes, but that's one of their gimmicks. It is going to be Shawn and Triple H against Undertaker and Kane. Kane is basically being paid, which I think is genius, by WWE making $100,000 donation to, what is that? WWE is making a donation to the Knoxville Public Safety Foundation for Kane's appearances. So I think it's genius. It's hard to. Kane's probably not going to get any political slack now because all of his money is going for the Public Safety Foundation. So it's going back. So I think that's a genius move, and you get to have that match. Justin, your thoughts on that tag match?
No, well, I mean, it's. Yeah, I never thought we'd see Shawn come out of retirement. So, I mean, I'll be watching as will the world. It is a smart move with the Kane thing. It's funny to me. It's still the same thing as, I mean, Kane, to me, Kane is one of my favorite characters ever. I just love the backstory. I love the debut. I love the evolution of the character. I just still think back to, 21 years ago. And, when I saw that great debut in St. Louis, I never would have ever believed anybody telling me that, in 20 years from now, he's going to be wrestling and all of his money is going to be going to public safety.
Yeah. Well, think about the first Hell in the Cell, right? Three of the key players, Undertaker, Kane, and Shawn, and they're all involved in this match.
And if you just want to include Triple H was the one who slid in the ring and dragged Shawn out of there.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Al, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just talking about this on my podcast last night. It's weird. I mean, God, if you told me that the return of Shawn Michaels after an 8-year retirement would be at a show in Saudi Arabia that was just kind of thrown onto the calendar, that part I don't love. But I can't. I imagine they are putting a whole lot of money in front of Shawn Michaels to do this, and I can't begrudge him the opportunity to make that money. And if you guys read his last book, but he wrote some about some of the maybe not so wise financial decisions he's made over the years. So he's not a guy who left the WWE and his wrestling career just loaded, never having to work again, and one night, a tag team match where he only has to do whatever half the work in there, or maybe less, do the hot tag and a couple of spots in there, and leave with, I imagine, at least 6 figures, if not maybe even 7
more
figures.
than that. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. How do you begrudge
Beats having to be JBL slave, right? Or what was he? JBL.
I would have loved to see. Yeah, I just watched that recently. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen, WrestleMania is coming to a New York area here in a few months. Imagine if the coming out of retirement match was AJ Styles or Daniel Bryan or a host of other guys. Who would have thought this would be the coming out of retirement match?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So Al, where can people find your stuff on the web here before we wrap up?
Again, Pro Wrestling Illustrated's website is pwi-online.com. I believe we got a big overhaul coming of the website, so it should be looking quite a bit different with a lot of new features before long. But you could download the digital edition there. You could subscribe both to the digital or print edition. You can listen to the PWI podcast that I host with Dan Murphy every couple of weeks there. You can link to a lot of your guys' stuff, so please go there and check it out. Follow us on Twitter @official PWI. My own Twitter is at @AlCastlePWI, and I think it's pretty much it.
Awesome. Justin, what do you want to plug before we take it home here?
Justin LaBar on Twitter. You can find me there with all my links to Wrestling Reality Podcast, Chairshot Reality here on Wrestling Inc., and all of my wonderful thoughts in the character limitation that is Twitter.
Awesome. I'm Glenn Rubenstein. You can find me on Twitter @Glenn Rubenstein. And we'll be back here Monday night. Me, Raj, Matt Morgan to talk about Monday Night Raw. Well, maybe Raj will be here. Maybe it'll be Justin because maybe Raj will go to Raw. And we'll see you back here next time, folks, on the Wrestling Inc. podcast. Take care.